Welcome back to my little series, See How They've Grown. So in this little series, we're going to be taking a look at past plants that I've featured in my Plant a Week video series. We're starting back from the very first episode, and we're going to work our way up through all of the recent Plant a Week videos. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of those videos. I'm going to watch them with you guys. And then I'm also going to show kind of what the plant looks like now, how much it's grown, talk about any care changes that I noticed while growing the plant. And I'll also talk about how the plant died if I no longer have it. I'll also post a card up here or up here in one of these areas where you can go and watch the actual videos if you have that plant and you want to know how to care for it. But yeah, this is See How They've Grown. So we're going to go all the way back to my very first Plant a Week videos from like a few years ago. So we're basically going to take a look at the plants in those videos, and I'll show you what they look like now. So the very first of my Plant a Week series videos is about the golden pothos, so we're going to watch that one. These are vining plants and very quick growers. To keep your plant from going bald on the top, you can cut the vines, root the cuttings, and then replant them in the same soil to give the top of the plant a bushier, fuller look. Pothos tend to favor a well-draining soil. I keep mine in a mixture of potting soil and orchid bark. Look at that pothos. That's a nice looking pothos. So this is one of my oldest plants, and it was actually started by a bunch of cuttings from a plant that my mom had. So you might notice there's like a couple of different pothos in this shot. The one in the like concrete pot is my big pothos that I still have. The other one in the gold one, I think my parents have that down in their bathroom or something. But they took that one back. That was originally my mom's that I fixed up. So here's what my pothos currently looks like. This is one of, I think, 3 golden pothos that I have right now. The other 2 are just little ones. They're a bunch of cuttings that are now just starting to grow. And the care for this, I mean, this is one of the easiest plants that I've ever had. Like, I've never had a problem with it. It grows constantly. You water it when it's dry. It can handle being overwatered. It can handle being underwatered. Yeah, it's just really fast. I have noticed that, like, you might want to fertilize it though, just because it does grow so fast that like it takes up a lot of energy. But yeah, these plants are also really great for like your areas in your house that don't get as much light as some other areas because they don't really need a lot of light. And yeah, so that was my golden pothos, still going strong, still constantly growing. So my second Plant a Week video was on the Fiddle Leaf Fig. So we're going to go ahead and give that a little watch. I actually purchased this plant for $5 at a nearby nursery called Wreckers in Bowmanville, Ontario, 2.5 years ago as a little sapling. And everything from this leaf up is new growth that has pushed out since I purchased it. So I still have this Fiddle Leaf Fig, and it has lost some leaves. I kind of accidentally dropped something on it, and it took off like 5 or 6 leaves. So it's just kind of got the top clump of leaves now. And it's growing new leaves, but it's kind of slow. It didn't really put out a lot of new growth when we moved to this new place in August, and then it went into dormancy really quick. I found that with my Fiddle Leaf Figs, their dormancy period lasts pretty long. I don't know if that's the same for everyone or if it's just, a result of Canadian light and Canadian weather. But yeah, it's grown quite a bit. I think in that video, it's grown about twice as tall as it was in that original video. So this plant is not as easy to care for as the pothos. You got to make sure that you get the watering right. I've almost drowned this guy, I don't know, many times. But I would still say, like, it's not the most difficult plant that I have, and it's doing all right. So the next plant that I did in my video series was the spider plant. So let's just take a look at that video. The reason they prefer well-draining soil is because they like to dry out between waterings. If they're left in soggy soil, it can lead to root rot. I water mine about once a week or when the soil is very dry. Spider plants prefer bright to moderate indirect light. They don't handle direct sunlight very well, and this can lead to burned leaves and brown tips and spots. So I no longer have this spider plant. I would have this spider plant still if I had remembered it. See, the problem with this plant was In the old house, I put it on top of my refrigerator because it was getting kind of big and bushy. So I put it up there so it would drape over the side of the refrigerator in the basement. It was still getting enough light there. Like it was getting less light than where it was, but it doesn't really matter with a spider plant. It was still in a well-lit area. And then I think a few weeks went by, and then a few more weeks went by, and then I happened to look up, and it was dead. It was crispy. There was no bringing it back. It was so far gone. So unfortunately, I no longer have that spider plant. But spider plants, they're easy to come by. Everywhere has them. Even like Walmart and big box stores like that carry spider plants. So if I ever want a new spider plant, I can get one. They're not like my favorite plant. The ends always seem to get crispy, no matter like where I have it or what I do with it. But I've also had spider plants for years. Like even when I was back in high school, I always had like a spider plant in my room or something like that. And they're super easy to care for. They're like Pothos. They can handle underwatering. They can handle overwatering. They don't need a lot of light. They're a pretty easy plant to take care of. But if you forget yours on top of the fridge and it completely dies, there's no coming back from that. So the next plant that I featured in my Plant Week video series was the Philodendron Deja. Let's take a look at that video. As such, the Deja is a hardy little philodendron that's more difficult to kill than most plants, unless you are my sister. The Deja, like most philodendrons, tend to favor a well-draining soil. I keep mine in a mixture of potting soil and orchid bark. They like to dry out between waterings, but be watered thoroughly once their soil is dry. I water mine about once a week, but I have noticed that it needs more frequent watering as we move into the growing season. This plant favors medium indirect light. It is shade tolerant, but for optimal growth, you want to set this plant in an area that gets more light than not. So I don't have this plant anymore. I didn't actually have it for a long time. It was doing all right. It was my sister's. It was really full, and then in her care, it kind of dwindled. So I took care of it, and it was coming back. It came back for the summer that I think I filmed that video. Then in the winter, it just... it lost a lot of leaves. It looked pretty scraggly. I wasn't giving it nearly enough light. And I kind of needed the space, so it went in the trash. I feel bad about it, but at the same time, it wasn't a great looking plant. It was really scraggly. The growth on it was so small, and every time it would put out a new leaf, it would be smaller than the last. So I think that experiment was over. Was pretty much over when it went out. So I don't really have any more care tips on that. I mean, I think my care tips were pretty valid. I just, I couldn't give it enough light, so it needed a lot more light than I could give it. And nobody in the house really wanted to take it over and take it somewhere where there was more light. Maybe if I had it in this apartment, it would do a lot better than it did in the basement at the old house. But it did not do too well, and it has since passed. So the last plant that we're going to look at is the 5th video from my Plant a Week series, and it is the Burro's tail. Dropping its fleshy leaves whenever it gets the chance. If you don't water it enough, it drops its leaves. If you water it too much, it drops its leaves. If you touch it, it drops its leaves. If you glance at it, it drops its leaves. The best way to deal with this plant is to place it in a brightly lit spot and just leave it alone. As succulents, burrows tail like well-draining soil and can't handle a lot of water in their soil. These fleshy leaves hold a lot of water and will tell you when they need more by shriveling a bit, shortly before falling off, of course. So I also no longer have this plant. So that's 3 plants in this video that I no longer have. I didn't kill this one. It was alive. It was doing fine. It was growing and had grown quite a bit. I couldn't handle it anymore. Like the amount of little fleshy leaves that it would drop everywhere, it drove me mental. Every time I would move it, every time I would touch it, like I needed to repot it, and I lost half of the leaves that were on it. So I think I sold it. I sold it on like Facebook or something like that. And I sold it for quite a bit, actually. Like it was $30 or something like that for the whole thing, because it was a really full burro's tail. I couldn't handle the mess. Like it would just drop every day I would find little fleshy things on the floor. My sister still has one of these, and it's grown a lot. It is really long. She has hers in her bathroom, I believe, and it doesn't seem to drop a lot of leaves. It's in a rather low light area though, and it's still growing. It's still got new growth on it. So I don't know how she is keeping hers alive and it's not dropping stuff for her all the time. I think maybe, you know, I have a tendency to touch my plants a lot and like move them around and and, you know, put them in new pots and everything. And that's one plant that you just can't really do that with. It wants to sit in its pot, not be touched, not be looked at, and just like live. And I'm not for plants like that. I want to touch my plants. It sounded kind of gross. But yeah, this was the first episode in my See How They've Grown series. Wasn't really the best episode. Like, out of the 5 plants that I touched on, I only have 2 of them. And they're not even like, you know, the fun plants. It's just a Fiddle Leaf Fig and a Pothos. But there's going to be more of these. I'm going to probably do one of these about once a month, and we'll take a look at like the next 5 plants that I did in my Plant a Week series, just to kind of see the growth from then to now, because it's been about 2 years, I think, since I started this Plant a Week series. So we've got 2 years of growth on a lot of these plants. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks again for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for similar content. On Mondays, I post videos about houseplants. And on Fridays, I also post videos about houseplants, and reading, writing, photography, art, and any other generic interests of mine. As always, you can find my social media links in the description below. Also, you can find links to H&H Games, the board game company I've helped create, and our debut board game, Season of Heroes. You can also find the Amazon links to my fantasy series, A Chronicle of Crowns. Thanks for watching, bye!